have started recording. So I will now share my screen and then we can get started. So we can video it and then have it uploaded to our YouTube. Awesome. So hello everyone, welcome to Navigating the College Admissions Process as a POC Student Event. Now this is another collaboration between Opportuniteens and Detester magazine. So without further ado, let's get started. During this event, which is recorded and it will be on YouTube, we will show you 3 different sections. First of all, we have our welcome, we have our introductions and presentations. Our second event will be our main Q&A, which we have taken questions from the participants who have signed up and will be watching this recording. And finally, we have our closing statement as well as some interactive Q&A. Cool. So a little bit about Opportuniteens. So we are currently a non-for-profit organization, and we are a huge database on our social media. And what we do is we prepare youth for their college and career readiness. And we host events and workshops like these to help students who currently need these helps when they are admitting to colleges around the world, including US colleges and international colleges. Make sure you, after seeing this YouTube video, you check out our Instagram account, which is here, as well as our LinkedIn page and our Discord invite link. So now I'll hand it over to our Detester magazine representative, where she will talk about the organization.
Thank you. So Detester magazine is a youth-led, fiscally sponsored nonprofit platform that was founded in 2019 and is dedicated to amplifying people of color youth activism and socio-political issues. We do this through our publications, our projects, as well as the workshops that we host, including this one. And we aim to promote racial solidarity amongst youth of color through creative expression and intersectional advocacy.
Awesome, thank you. I'm just going to introduce our host of the event. So Alyssa Rao, that's me. I am currently the event coordinator at Opportuniteens, and in my spare time, I like to do a lot of swimming and debating. Cool. I'll hand it over to Dorothy and Chloe to introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Chloe Mashana. My pronouns are she, hers, and I am a high school junior, and I am the co-project director here at Detester.
Hi everyone, I'm Dorothy. I'm the other co-project director at Detester. I'm currently a high school senior, and in my free time, I like to read and make friendship bracelets.
Awesome. So we'll start off with the college admission process. Today we have Sylvia with us, and she will be introducing herself and she will go through her presentation, which you will be able to see on the YouTube video.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. This is an honor and a pleasure to be within this community. I know that the opportunities for students of color and first generation sometimes can get a little bit bogged down with everything else that's happening within your period of time. Senior year is very, it goes by really fast. So I know that you have to really take advantage of this. So thank you for inviting me to be here. My name is Sylvia Juárez-Magaña, and my pronouns are she, her, and ella. I am bilingual. So if there's any of your community out there that would like to have the conversation in Spanish, I can. I am first generation to go to college. I'm from a rural area in Southern California. And my sister and I not only have our bachelor's, but we also have our master's. And that for our family, that is uncommon, especially for the young ladies. I'm not so young anymore, but for my sister and I, we really had to we really had to make sure that we prepared ourselves And she and I both are entrepreneurs in different fields. So myself in education, I am an education consultant, and I help students to figure out the path of this craziness that is called the college admissions process. And I do work with school districts, nonprofits, foundations to try and enhance the programming that comes along with that. So as you can tell, I have that background. How did I get it? I am a former admissions officer for UC Berkeley. So one of the things that I did was not only represent the university in Southern California, but also sit and read applications. After I finished my time with the university, I spent a substantial period of time, almost a decade, returning and helping them read for their college admissions. And then about a couple of years ago, I made a pivot to the University of California, Davis. And now I currently read for them, and I'm excited about starting that process pretty soon. I've helped countless students to consider what their options are, so I really feel that I may be able to give you some advice that could be helpful. If I can have the next slide, Lisa, please. I'm also very important to the conversation. If you're pursuing an advanced degree, I would encourage you to start looking now for fellowships. I am a National Urban Fellow. I have to give out that shout out. They covered the cost of me attending my graduate school, and that was very important. I did graduate school way after I finished my bachelor's, but I really encourage you to think about what your next steps are, even before you get to your bachelor's point. What will your advanced degrees be? And I think that that's also very important, but look out for those fellowships if you're interested in some of these cost effectiveness. So I wanted to start off with the major struggles. We are, for the University of California, here in California, and some of the major universities across the state, we are coming up on the deadlines. So I wanted to start with the struggles because you're probably already in the thick of it, trying to figure out what to do in terms of your writing. And I want to make sure that we're addressing those types of things and being proactive as you're working on the writing, because in all honesty, that's what you have the most control over right now, right? Your grades, your tests, all of that has been a work in progress since 9th, for some of you 7th and 8th grade, even more probably before. But I want to make sure that we're taking advantage of what we're here for, and that's the college admissions application. And understanding the question. I know that some students have a really hard time with these questions. Especially right now, universities are asking about things like diversity. What does that mean? For some, maybe for your family members, if you ask them, they may talk about race and ethnicity, but for you, it's about background and experiences. So don't be afraid to control the narrative in the sense of you defining what it is that diversity is. That's an example that I'm giving you. If you're applying to Applied Texas, any Texas schools, Applied Texas does ask that question in if you're applying to A&M. So you want to make sure that you're understanding what the question is, but don't be afraid to define it in your own ways. Therefore, you could use your experiences to be able to put together an example of how you've taken advantage of the things around you to be able to define something like diversity. Finding a way to construct your image is really important. And sometimes it has to do with vocabulary. And to be quite honest, there's a lot of different ways to define yourself, but let's be real, you have to keep it to a word count, right? So you're going to define yourself in one way if you have 350 words, or you're going to define yourself differently if you have 650 words. So we want to make sure what the word count is. When I'm working with a student, I don't encourage them to start and stick to, you're only going to write, your drafts are only going to be 350 if that's what they're asking for. I encourage a student to just write. You can trim later, you can figure out, it's really the content of what you're providing the representatives. And that's really important for you to think about, is your vocabulary. How does it stand out? Or if you feel you have your own way of expressing yourself, be sure to talk about it. Be sure to demonstrate that the tone in which you describe yourself can really come across in terms of the words that you use. And that's very important. Feeling comfortable with what you're presenting means that you have to produce drafts. And I know sometimes we're in the, like I mentioned earlier, we're time constraints, especially with your senior year. If you're in IB programs and you're dual enrollment programs, if you're an athlete, there's so many different ways that you're being pulled. And let's be honest, you also want to have some fun, right? There's that last homecoming, there's that last prom. I know that there's some socializing that may be happening that you really want to be a part of because it is your senior year. We want to make sure that we're taking advantage of that as well. but you have to make time for drafts. I tell students that your okay draft gets to be at the 4th draft. So let's think about it. Your first draft, you're just brainstorming essentially. Your second draft, you're like, oh, okay, what was I trying to say here? Not really kind of understanding. Your third draft, you're probably including things you forgot to say. So by the 4th draft, you're really in your zone of what you're trying to answer the question for. So we want to make sure that we give you time for drafts and feeling comfortable with it. And if you share it with someone, don't be afraid to get that feedback. Don't share it with your friends who are going to tell you like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever seen. Oh my God. No, you want to share it with people that are really going to give you some serious feedback. And that's important to feel comfortable with. So if you have a counselor, if you have a career or college person on your high school campus, please be sure to tap into them, because that's what they're there for, is to help you with these types of things. May I have the next slide, please? And if there's any big questions, please feel free to type them in. If somebody can stop me and ask me the question, I really appreciate it. So it's easier said than done. This is nobody saying that this is an easy process. So again, like I said, the vocabulary is important. We want to make sure that you understand what you're trying to say. Brainstorming is a must. So no matter when you start, you definitely have to make some time for brainstorming. And more importantly here, I want to talk about the attitude that you have with things. If you're passionate about something, you guys are touching on some really serious issues here when it comes to social and political points of reference within the society, racial inequities. There's some really great stuff in terms of the attitude that you're providing. If this is your passion project, don't be afraid to put that on the page. Talk about it and make sure that you're talking about how it examples your traits and characteristics. That's really important. Don't leave anybody with a message at the end that's a negative message about yourself. You want to talk about yourself in a positive way. You want to make sure that the reader understands that you are someone that is merely making strides now, and you're going to make strides on their campus. That's exactly what they're looking for. And that's the type of critical thinking and focused thought, organized thought, that what admissions individuals are looking for. We want to make sure that you understand that this is being read, and it may be read for scholarship purposes too. So you may be, in some cases, not only be being considered for admissions, but also for scholarship. May I have the next slide, please? So as I mentioned, I work for the University of California, and in the past, I'm what is called an external reader. I just come in specifically for that. And these are the 13 points that the University of California is looking for as one of the largest, if not the largest, systems in which individuals apply to. UCLA is one of the institutions that's part of the University of California, and they received last year about 139,000 applications. So everybody always asks, well, what are they looking for? Is there a secret to it? Not really. It's here. I'm telling you, 13 points. There used to be 14 when it included testing, like your SAT and your ACT. They are now test optional. I would like you to think about that if you are encouraged to take a test, remember that if you take it, you will be considered for placement and maybe even scholarships based on your test scores. So I'm not saying you have to do it, but these are some of the points that you can look at. We want to see that the quality of your senior year is as strong as any other year that you've had. What kind of opportunities have you taken advantage of in your high school or your area? Have you improved in your academics? Don't be afraid to talk about the fact that you might not have done as strongly as you wanted to in a subject matter, but we want to make sure that you're also talking about the growth that you gained from that you understood that you had to ask for help, or what was it that gave you the moment to have that improvement. If you have a special talent, that's not just directed to those individuals in performing arts or in athletics. That could be the fact that you're a patient and understanding person. How has that led you to be someone that has a special talent in that? So again, as I mentioned earlier, don't be afraid to define some of this narrative. And then talking about your accomplishments. This is a time for you to boast. I know sometimes it's hard to talk about yourself, but these are the type of things that will help you stand out in your application. And we want to make sure that you're talking about it in a way that makes you feel comfortable. Is there any questions? I know I covered a lot.
Awesome, thank you. So we have a group of questions at the end for all of the event panelists. So it would be great if we could just answer all the questions at the end, because I know we have a list of these waiting for you.
Okay,
So,
perfect.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Okay. Now I will hand over to our Dorothy and Chloe to introduce our panelists who are going to be answering the other questions that we have in our list. Thank you.
Okay, hello everybody. And Elisa, I think the screen is a little cut off. Like maybe you could try unsharing, then resharing. Okay, it fixed itself, never mind. But so first we have Evangeline, and Evangeline, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Evangeline. I'm a first year at Harvard University. I'm originally from the Toronto-ish area in Canada, and I am concentrating in math with perhaps a secondary in either educational studies or economics.
Thank you. And Dhalston, would you like to introduce yourself? Or Mariah, I'm sorry.
Yes. Hey guys, I'm Maria. I went to Texas A&M University. I was a freshman in 2016 and I earned my bachelor's of science in telecommunication and media. And then I pursued my master's of science in marketing, which I just graduated from this year. So yeah, and now I work full-time at a digital content agency.
And Dhalston.
Hey guys, my name is Dhalston. I also went to A&M. I was fortunate enough to receive my bachelor's and my master's from there, both in kinesiology. And I'm currently a third year physical therapy student working on my doctorate. So I'll be finishing that up in May and hopefully joining the workforce soon. So.
And Huan.
Hi everyone, my name is Huan. I go by she, her, hers. I'm a first year at Harvard University, and I'm interested in studying computer science and global health and health policy. I'm also the founder and executive director at Detester magazine, and I use the platform to help myself advance in my interest in social justice. I'm also really passionate about the intersection of science, technology, and the humanities. And in my free time, I make a lot of watercolor, digital designs, and watch anime.
Okay, awesome. So I think we'll start off with the Q&A session now. I will be stopping to share my screen so that we can all see everybody's faces when we're going over the Q&A. So I'll start off with the question and we can go around for each event panelist. What were your extracurricular activities that you participated in high school that you think was a reason that you got admitted into your university now? And Human, can you please start us off with that?
Yeah, so I actually did a lot of variety of activities in high school, mostly were because they interest me. And I didn't realize they were like really diverse. And many of them were really different from each other. So for example, I was in our art magazine. I also did our student government. Other things I did were research in anthropology and epidemiology. I also did a lot of volunteer work. So I think it's the diversity in the interests and my commitment to all of those interests together really shaped like how I am have interest in multiple areas and really like intersectional and multidisciplinary.
Awesome, thank you. And can we move on to Evangeline now?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily just one extracurricular. I think it's really a culmination of like the person I portray through my application. So especially for the people watching this panel, I don't think you necessarily need to worry about, will this extracurricular be a good use of my time to get in? Because at the end of the 4 years, you know, it's always like a toss up whether or not you get into whichever school you have in mind. So I think it's more worth it to think about, do I love this extracurricular, and is it a way that I want to spend my time, rather than thinking about the application at the end of your 4 years.
Cool. Okay, let's move on to the next person.
May I add something, Elisa?
Yeah, sure.
Just really quickly, I also want to add that don't get caught up too much in the titles. Sometimes your most active is the membership that you do. And we all know that all organizations only have so many responsibilities that have titles with them, like presidents, vice presidents. And you can definitely talk about being very active and not necessarily have a title. So I really want to put it out there for those that feel that, well, I'm not the president or vice president or treasurer, that you have opportunities that you can talk about that demonstrate your leadership that may be more informal than formal.
Awesome, thank you. What about you, Maria?
Yeah, I think that college is definitely a time of exploration and kind of discovery and just an opportunity to take on new challenges. And I think that also can really start in high school. So I love what Evangeline was saying about, you know, it's really about the passion and pursuing just kind of whatever interests you at that time, because that's really going to show in your application. For me personally, I mean, I did cheer all from middle school through high school, and that was something that I was really committed to. But then I also did theater, and then I also would do like one-off projects. Like we did this Library of the Future thing, which is really cool for Dell, which is where I'm from Round Rock, and that's where Dell is headquartered at. So that was a really cool opportunity to do, you know, early on in my high school career. And I got to talk about that and put that on my resume. And that was like to do with interior design. So I love the idea of, you know, having the passion really portray or show through your application.
And finally, Dhalston.
Yeah, so I was an athlete, so spent a lot of time with that, obviously, and then I was also part of National Honor Society. So I think a lot of it is just showing kind of your commitment to whatever it is that you are doing, and showing like the time and the effort that you're willing to actually put in. And then colleges really look at that and kind of get an idea of kind of who you are, but also like your own work ethics, or what you're really able to do outside of just the classroom. And so being able to just devote time to that, and being able to show that you are able to commit time outside of your academic studies is really important to kind of your whole college admissions process as well.
Yeah, thank you for all of your responses. And so moving on to the next question, for our freshmen, we would like to know what your college experience has been like so far. Have there been any major culture shocks specifically? And for our graduates, what has your experience been like being a person of color student on a predominantly white campus? And anyone can feel free to go.
I can go first. Coming as someone who's on like almost full financial aid, the culture shock actually like just coming from the community I was from. I think as a woman of color, I am part of the Asian American Women's Association. So there's a really great community there. There's the Chinese Students Association. There's the Asian American Association. There's AAA. There's endless amounts of cultural organizations that you can look to for support. And then there's also offices of international support, because I'm also an international student.
Yeah, just adding on to Evangeline, I'm also part of the Asian Women Association as a big sip, small sip. Aside from that, I'm also a part of the other cultural and ethnic student groups like the Chinese Student Association and Asian American Association, and there's a strong sense of community in those clubs. So I think like finding communities and groups on campus that align with your identity really help you feel like you have a sense of belonging here and that you know you have a support system who you can rely on, and people who share similar background as you that you can connect with.
I'll jump in and just kind of share my experience as a person of color and as being, post-grad. So at Texas A&M, it's obviously in the South and it's a PWI. It's a really huge school. We have a ton of students. And so that can be a shock just, like as a foundational thing, coming to a school, if you went to a small school and then you go to like something with 70,000 students on campus. And I love the idea of, utilizing your resources. We have obviously the Department of Multicultural Services and so many, organizations under that umbrella. And I think I went a little bit of a different route. I was really involved in Fish Camp, and I would just encourage, people to not be afraid of pursuing something that's like a little bit different or, integrating into the school or integrating into the university in a little bit of a different way. For me, going back to Fish Camp, it's definitely a place where so many different people can come together. And at least in my experience, each year, I did it for 3 years, came together from all different backgrounds, whether it was, cultural or experience, diverse experiences. And that to me was so formative because I got to interact with so many different types of people who had different types of experiences and learned so much from them and how they've lived their life. And we kind of were able to develop our own community within each other, which was something really exciting and an experience that I wouldn't trade for anything. So I think just the takeaway there is to, well, yes, of course, utilize your resources. That's what they're there for. Professors and those departments are there to support you, the ones that really share and can understand where you're coming from. But also, college is an adventure, and don't be afraid to make space for yourself elsewhere.
Yeah, I would also agree with that as well. Obviously, I went to A&M, and it can be crazy just how large it is. And so for me, I was fortunate that I was involved in a few different things, mostly campus recreation. So I spent a lot of time out on the intramural fields, doing some officiating. And so the people that I worked with, there was a really, really vast in terms of the actual minorities or whoever it was, whether it was male, female, Hispanic, Asian, Black, white, it didn't really matter. We were kind of all there together. So having the opportunity to be a part of a group like that and then kind of interact with the student body on almost like a nightly basis was very formative to just get an idea of you can't always see what the entire university is like kind of as a whole because you're just one person in a massive 70,000, right? But if you can get into a point where you can have an opportunity to just interact across different parts of the university, whether it's different orgs on campus, different frats or sororities, or just groups of people that are coming together from their classes, right? So having the opportunity to interact with all of those people kind of really gave a really good snapshot of, yeah, maybe the university is seen in a certain light sometimes, but being able to just really interact with people kind of really gave a different perspective on what these students were actually like and who you were actually going to school with and interacting with. And so I think that was really helpful for me as well. I know for my undergraduate and my graduate education there, I was a part of a really small, almost major kind of cohorts. And so I didn't have, once I got past my sophomore, junior year, I didn't have classes of 100 people anymore. It was classes of 20, 30 people max. And so being able to build a community within that as well was really useful. And so it's almost find a way to get plugged in, kind of create your small community, but also be willing to kind of step out of that as well. And being able to see kind of what is going on across your entire campus is also really, really useful and kind of just being comfortable in where you are. So.
May I also remind or jump in as Mariah and Dalton were talking. Dhalston. Sorry, Dhalston.
No, you're good.
I'm so sorry, Hen. I want to also talk about that. I'm 51, so my experience is very different than what you guys are going through right now, especially for those that are applying. But I want to remind you that there's also a community of alumni. I'm very active, or I was very active on my campus when I attended UC Berkeley. A few Chicanos were on the campus when I was there, so I made it my responsibility that once I would go back, I would talk to students of color and talk about my experience of being sometimes the only Mexican in the room when I came from a community that was all Mexican. So it's very important that you feel comfortable with all layers, not only the ones that are currently on your campus, but there's some of us that walked through those halls and felt the same exact way that you did, and can help you navigate, can help you network, because we also need you to stay and graduate. We don't want you to just kind of make the numbers when you arrive there. We need you to finish. We need you to be professionals. We need you to go to grad school. That's not me talking about as a college consultant doing the hustle about higher ed. That's really about the representing your community in so many different ways when it comes to going to a college campus. And I want to point that out there, because you all, this panel is currently institutions that have great alumni services. I'm not saying that we're perfect as alumni, but I am saying that we're another type of resource.
Thank you, Sylvia, for bringing that up, because I think a lot of the time students tend to forget about like alumni connections, even though they can definitely play a huge role in your college experience. So sort of moving forward, this is a question for everybody, including Sylvia. If you could give one piece of advice to someone who is currently going through the college admissions process, what would you tell them? And anyone can go first.
I will start just because I feel like I have a very personal anecdote. I would say be as prompt as you can and really get started, as early as you can. Like Sylvia was talking about earlier, the deadlines are coming up. So if you're still, working through your applications, really try to focus on that and make that a priority, because when I was applying to college and before I was fully admitted to Texas A&M, I was actually admitted as a blend team student, which meant that I wasn't technically like a full-time Texas A&M student. I was taking some classes at Texas A&M as a freshman, but other of like 2 or 3 of my classes were on like a sister campus. And I don't know to this day why. I think something has to do with like the timing of my application. Like I wish I had just paid a little bit more attention to that, when I was applying to college, because that could have changed, my experience, my first semester at Texas A&M. But obviously everything, I had a great experience. But yeah, that's definitely something that I would point out to everyone.
To some extent, this goes off of what Mariah said. I think I put off writing my essays for a very long time because I heard so much about, oh, your essay should be unique, it should be one of a kind, something they've never read before. But realistically, nobody is that special that your application is completely unique. So I would worry more, instead of having the most independent idea or the most creative idea for your personal statement, think about the person that you want to come across as, and worry less about being one of a kind and being more like your whole self in your essays.
And if I can jump in on that comment as well, is that be honest with yourself. I know that you have a lot of pressures with maybe your family members wanting you to be a certain field or a certain industry. There's often talk with those of us that are from communities that are low income that you want to go into a field that is lucrative, but maybe it's not what you want to do. I think I can tell when a student is really working towards what is somebody else's goal or dream instead of theirs. So the honesty will come across in your writing as you've engaged in different experiences. I can tell if you've really taken an opportunity, or you're just indifferent, but you're participating. Believe it or not, we can tell in the writing, and how you poise that and how you come across is really important to think about as you're thinking about the schools you're applying to, because you also want to, as great as you are, you want to apply to schools broadly. You want to apply to at least 9 schools. And sometimes I think that's not enough. And I know that sounds crazy, but you really have to apply in a wide range. not just all name brand. It's very important that you see that there's other individual schools out there that could provide you some wonderful opportunities, some great internships, careers, whatever it may be, but they just don't happen to have the name brand than some of the other schools in the US or even the world. So please be open to some of these institutions, but also think about the type of thing that you want to do for yourself.
And just to add on to Sylvia, that like you're not just applying to name schools, you have to read through our research on the school, because each school has their own personality and there are different resources at the schools. And especially since a lot of the audiences are students of color, knowing how the support system is like and what resources available to help students of color navigate the college is important to understanding what your experience is like if you were to get into that school. So it will help you later on, since you only have like a certain limited number of schools that you can apply to on the Common App. It has a 20 school limit. And so knowing like where to use those spots on your application is important. And also don't overwhelm yourself with all these supplement essays because you're just applying to name schools. Like, have a list of schools broken down into like safety, match, and then your target or reach schools. Having that balance will help you through this process. And talking to students when you are thinking about where to apply could really help you as well, like talking through maybe the college's webinars. I know a lot of colleges right now are hosting virtual webinars where you can ask students questions and talk to those current students. And that can be really helpful. At least for me, when I was applying, I've reached out to some students who are currently attending those universities. And through that conversations, I got to know more about the school and really think about whether or not I would like want to apply there.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I agree with all of that. Just making sure that you're doing all of your research, if possible. Make an effort to go to that school, like walk around campus, kind of see how students interact. Make an effort to try to talk to students, kind of like what was already said, and then kind of going into like the major or something that you're looking forward or looking into doing. Kind of what Sylvia had also said is, do something that you're passionate about. And even if it's something that you're not sure, like do research on certain career fields, do watch YouTube videos. There are blogs out there. I know I went into school trying to do something that I didn't want to do. And it really affected my first semester and made it kind of difficult. And I had to kind of climb out of that. And it was fine, obviously, but just make an effort to just do your research. Don't try to go into something blindly. I know I've heard of students going to schools that they had never even seen before, like in person. Then they get there and it's just a massive culture shock. So to do your research and just make sure that you know exactly what you're getting into and apply to schools that align with what you want to get out of this college education experience.
And I just wanted to add that this is also a time to be inclusive when it comes to our students who have disabilities, whether it be physical disabilities or intellectual disabilities. I think it's really important that this process be for them as well. So if you are part of a community that is encouraging different students to promote, we don't often talk about what that means for students that may have a different path when it comes to learning. So please be sure that as you're promoting the different types of schools or the different types of research to schools, that we're also talking about some of those things that are important, like the Students with Disabilities Resource Centers or whatever it is that they're called on each campus. We want to make sure that students that feel marginalized also feel included and in part of these communities. So that research should include that as well. And that's not just for students with disabilities, but we have a wide range of different communities that feel marginalized that should feel that as they're applying to schools, they should be able to research that. So I just wanted to point that out.
Cool, thank you for that, Sylvia. Now when we sent out the registration form for this recorded event, there were many questions that were about tips that you guys can provide for students. One question that was very popular was, what tips would you provide for students who are writing their personal essays or personal prompts, and along the lines, like any tips on how to make your college application stand out? That was one of the questions, yeah.
Sounds silly, but answer the question. Sometimes I read something that the student is giving me a really long, convoluted, or very specific event that I'm supposed to determine what that means to them or what I'm supposed to extract from there. So if you have a particular experience, please be sure to tell me that you're trying to show me how disciplined you are, how focused you are, how determined you are, and the example is that experience. Don't just give me the complete story of how you're a fantastic individual in this capacity. Don't let the reader have to figure it out. You want to spell it out for them. You want to be clear, concise. This is not the time to be coy. You want to be clear as to how you're telling me that you will stand out with this particular trait, characteristic, leadership, community involvement, whatever it is. Be clear. Don't let me have to figure it out.
I would say be genuine in what you're saying and try to make sure that despite you editing, hopefully sufficiently, your voice is still coming through and you still sound like a human being at the end of the day. And then I also think that, especially with applications that have a personal statement and then also a handful of supplementary essays, you want to be showing a different aspect of who you are with each one. You don't want each essay to be talking about your high school like soccer team, because it really just shows that you play soccer and that there's not much more to your application.
I also want to stress how important it is to be like genuine and honest in your essays, and that it really portrays who you are instead of what you want to present, or the kind of person that you want to maybe write about, but it's not who you truly are. And you don't have to make yourself like seem like you're not someone who is like just all perfect or flawless. It's okay to show your flaws and that your failures. You can write about your failure, you can show your growth. That's a good way of showing growth. So don't be afraid of like hiding parts of yourself in the process, or trying to add little like supplements that are not reflective of who you are. So just be genuine and be honest in your essays is important.
One tip I'll add, and I think Sylvia kind of talked about it earlier, just because I know a lot of students kind of sometimes struggle when writing with beginning, and that's the first step and the most important thing is to start, and you can get a prompt and just feel very stumped. And I just think that, taking some time to just start writing and then see what becomes of it. I think some of the best kind of narratives or stories or the answers in what ends up coming out. And then again, like Sylvia and, everyone on the panel has said, you edit sufficiently, you have it looked at, but I think the most important thing is to start and just kind of see what comes of it if you're having trouble, taking that on.
Yeah, I don't really have anything like outside of that to add. Just being very genuine, being honest about who you are and what you do and kind of where you come from, and don't be afraid to add like personal stories about kind of what you've gone through, and even if it's something that maybe you haven't struggled in your life to an extent where you feel like it's worth talking about, talk about good things, talk about who you are. Talk about your life, talk about what you've done in school or what you've done outside of school, and just make it something where it's the reader knows kind of who they're reading about, who they're like, kind of they get like a full snapshot of who you are as a person, and not just looking at, well, this person is just answering this prompt and it's just an answer. So but yeah, I definitely agree with all the things that were said earlier, for sure.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you all for being here. Once this event would go out on YouTube, then we will definitely link each event panelist, their contact information in the bio of the YouTube video, so that if you have any additional questions after watching this YouTube video, you'll be able to contact them if you need to. So yeah, I think Chloe and Dorothy had some ending words as well.
Yes, so thank you all for joining this event and really providing your advice to all of our viewers. And I think it will be really helpful, especially since this event did focus on POC and underserved communities. So I'd like to thank you again.
Yeah, and I'd like to just say that I'm actually currently applying to college right now, and this workshop was super helpful, and I'm really grateful to have all of you speak at our event today.
Well, thank you for having me. I know this is a privileged space for me to be in, and hopefully I can continue to provide any guidance that you may need. Dorothy, go girl, you can do it. So I think it's important that you feel supported. You feel that this is your process. You do have something to contribute, and I don't want it to be to go without saying that it's important that you see what happens. Not everyone's going to get admitted to their first choice, so let's just be grown about that. But if you have other choices, you've done your research, there's a place for you somewhere, and you should be pursuing that higher education wherever it takes you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I just want to say good luck to everyone with their college application process or your college experiences. You'll all do great.
Cool, yep, thank you. We'll send out the link to this YouTube video once it goes on live. So yeah, thank you for now, and we'll see you guys later through email.